طيب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, uh, we continue inshallah our class on Al-Aqidah Tahawiyya, and we have reached the point where we will now discuss in more detail some of the qualities, attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it relates to, to it being eternal and everlasting. So, Imam al-Tahawi, the author, he says, ما زال بصفاته قديما قبل خلقه. He has existed. It's the third line on the screen. He has existed with his timeless attributes before his creation. In other words, before he has created his creation, Allah has had the attributes that he has even before he created the creation. لم يزدد بكونهم شيئا لم يكن قبلهم من صفاته, which added nothing to his essence that was not already among his attributes. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not gain an attribute after creating us, after creating the creation. وكما كان بصفاته أزليا كذلك لا يزال عليها أبديا. As his attributes were before the creation, so they will continue forever. When he says أزليا, it means in the past. And لا يزال means in the future. Just as his attributes have always been, so too they will be in the future. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot change, because change is an attribute which is indicative of dependency. So why would something change if it did not require the change? And we are talking here also about the fact that a change to some aspect relates to the change of the essence. And for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes to be eternal, they can never change, because the eternality of an attribute means that if it were to change, it's no longer eternal. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always had his attributes even before creating the creation. Right? So this is a very important statement here that the Shaykh is making, because he is describing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being characterized, of course, by Allah's his attributes and his names eternally. And these are both attributes as it relates to Allah's essence. What do we mean by that? Life. We said hayat, the attribute of life, attribute of power, qudra, attribute of knowledge, ilm, attribute of will, irada, etc., hearing, of sight. All of these attributes are called the attributes of his essence. Okay? Or attributes of his actions as it relates to his actions in creation, in creating us, in giving us life and death, etc. So all of these attributes, whether they're from the attributes of his essence or the attributes of his actions, they are eternal. And he had not gained a single one of them, nor has any of them changed despite the creation that he has created. And as such, they've never changed, and they will always be in the future. Okay. Then he says, ليس بعد خلق الخلق استفاد اسم الخالق. It is not because he created the creation that he earned the name the creator, nor by his making it ولا بإحداث البرية استفاد اسم الباري. Nor by his making it, nor by him creating us, did he earn the name the maker. Al-Khaliq, the creator, and the maker, Al-Bari, they are the same. They mean the same thing in terms of creation. Yes, there are certain subtle differences in their meanings, but the creator is someone who creates, and the Bari, the maker, is the one who originates, not like anything before. But they both have the same meaning of being a creator or a maker. Okay. Right. So these are all part of his characteristics. They are also eternal. And so, just as we will mention now in a moment, just as Allah will resurrect us on the day of judgment, He's already attributed with the name of the resurrector. So too, He is always attributed with the name the creator, even before He had created us. Because remember, Allah is not attached to time and space. We are. Okay, when Allah created the creation, He created time and space with it. Okay, so the attribution of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with these particular characteristics of being the creator, that is not something which his attribute will be attached to that which he created. If every time Allah's attribute became something new based on what he created, then you would be constantly changing. You'd be constantly changing, right? And so if any of them were not to be there, then he would not be attributed with these attributes, and that's strange. So I mean the impossibility of that is very clear. Okay, all of this, again, as we mentioned in the previous class, all of these arguments, they go back to the main point that Allah is He is transcendent beyond deficiency. Transcendent beyond deficiency. He says, له معنى الربوبية ولا مربوب ومعنى الخالق ولا مخلوق. He has the quality of lordship without requiring anything to lord over, and the quality of being the creator without requiring anything to create. And this is simply an emphasis and a confirmation of what we had initially said. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator, and He is the Rabb. Rabb, yes, you translate it as lordship, but really it means that the one who takes something and nurtures it through stages. Like a child, the murabbi of a child is like their parent or their guardian, who takes them step by step through the stages of development in life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the nurturer even before there were any creation to nurture. Okay? How you might ask, oh, how does that make sense? Allah is not attributed with time and space. So His attributes are always with Him and He never changes. And so the criteria that we give for human beings when we describe them with attributes does not befit the criteria that we give, or rather the attribution of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with these attributes. Because He's beyond limitation, like the limitations of human beings. I hope that's clear. Yes, some of these arguments are very, you know, common sense, but it's important for us to state them correctly. And then he says, as we made mention of, وكما أنه محيي الموتى بعدما أحيا استحق هذا الاسم. Just as he resurrects the dead after they first had life, he deserved this name before he brought them to life. The name of the resurrector. قبل إحيائهم كذلك استحق هذا الاسم حيث اسم الخالق قبل إنشائهم. Likewise, he deserved the name of the creator before he produced them. That is, or this is because he has power over all things. ذلك بأنه على كل شيء قدير. وكل شيء إليه فقير. And all things are in need of him. وكل أمر إليه يسير. Every matter is easy for him. لا يحتاج إلى شيء. He has no need of anything. ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. For there is nothing like unto him, and he is the hearing and the seeing. Yeah, we say, and he is the hearing and the seeing, but we better to translate it as yet he is the hearing and seeing. Because people might ask, because this is a verse of the Quran. He says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There is nothing like unto him, yet he is the hearing and seeing. Because when we say there's nothing like God, nothing like unto God, and he's the hearing and seeing, you might ask, but don't we hear and don't we see? No, it's the hearing of God and the sight of God is completely different. It's not created, doesn't depend on any instruments. So here, it is despite, so yet he's the hearing and seeing. In other words, there is nothing like him, like unto him, including in his hearing and in his seeing. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anything you might consider Allah to be in terms of resembling the creation, he is the opposite. Okay. All right. So as we mentioned again, the meaning of when we say قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ in Surah Ikhlas, say Allah is one, absolutely unique. Allahu Samad. Samad, here it means the independent. It means the one who is not in need of anything for anything. But yet everything is in need of him for everything. Okay? And also in the verse that says لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, this is very, here we have a very important point, which is the importance of studying the Arabic language. Why? Because if you were to translate this verse word by word, you would say laysa. Laysa means negation, means not. Ka, like. Mithl also means like. The kaf, we say ka means like. Mithl also means like. Mithlihi, like him. In other words, if you translate it literally, it says there is nothing like his likeness. You're following? There is nothing like his likeness. But that's not intended. Rather, the first like is emphasized. In other words, there is absolutely nothing like him. So there's an emphasis here. This repetition comes of meaning comes for emphasis. But if we were to say there's nothing like the likeness of God, there'd be problematic, because first of all we are affirming for him a likeness. There's something like him, and he is not like his likeness. And so we've already established a likeness to God and saying that God is not like his likeness. And then we've also put him below his likeness. So this is, in fact, a blasphemy to say that the meaning of this verse is that he is not like his likeness. So this shows us the importance of learning Arabic, because this repetition of the word like or likeness is to establish emphasis. Are you following? And the scholars of language, some of them, they say when this occurs, that it's as if the verse is being repeated twice. In other words, you're saying there's nothing like him, there's nothing like him. Yeah, exactly. That tawqid, the purpose of the repetition is tawqid. Why? Because where does tawqid come from? The fact that it is extra. And any word that is mentioned extra in terms of the meaning is there, and if it were to be removed, the original meaning would not be removed. It comes for emphasis. Tawqid. Okay. Then he says, excuse me, he says, خلق الخلق بعلمه وقدر لهم أقدارا. He created the creation with his knowledge. Right? In other words, he brought forth creation into existence by his knowledge and measured for them their portions in life. He decreed destinies for them. وضرب لهم آجالا, and he set for them lifespans. So this is a clarification that whatever happens in the world is by Allah's appointment, by Allah's taqdeer. Allah has appointed every single thing in this world to occur as He wills it to occur. Nothing can exist except that Allah decrees it. But does He always decree that which He loves? Or at times does He decree things even if He does not, if He's not pleased with it? Yes, in fact, He can decree things even if He's not pleased with it, because his pleasure lies in following what he wants from his servants. Being Muslim, following the rulings of ibadah, of worshipping Allah, so that we become closer to Him. But the disbelief of people who are not Muslim, especially if they do so willingly, this is something that Allah wills as well. That's their choice. Allah wills it because it's in existence. Something cannot be in existence except if Allah wills it. But at the end of the day, it's their choice. Right? And so it's in the knowledge of Allah, in the sense that before the creation, Allah knows the choices of every single one of the creation. And so it's not a prescription, but rather it's a description of how the creation will be. And so when he says خَلَقَ الْخَلْقَ بِعِلْمِهِ, that he created the creation with his knowledge, no, it doesn't mean that Allah apportioned everything in creation with his knowledge. Rather, he knows everything in creation. But how did creation come about? Through his power, through Allah's will and power. Okay? Right. And then of course he says وَضَرَبَ لَهُمْ أَجَالًا. He set for them lifespans. And this lifespan can never be changed. This lifespan can never be changed. And so when we say death, when death occurs, it is the end of the lifespan. No matter how it occurs. No matter how it occurs. And so if someone is killed, uh, Allah protect us all. If someone is murdered or killed, that is part of that is the time, the end of their lifespan, and not that killing is a shortening of a lifespan. Okay, as believed by a different group among the Muslims called the Mu'tazila, as we mentioned. This group that's not part of the mainstream believe that death, if it's done by killing, it's not a result of It's not a result of what? It's not a result of the ending of the lifespan, but rather it's a shortening of the lifespan. فضل, yes, go ahead, please.
Um, just wondering, with the idea, that we know that all lifespans are set short, how would one, I guess, respond to someone who uses that as a reason to behave, like say driving dangerously, or like, why would I wear my seatbelt? Why would I, follow safety precautions because my life's already written no matter what? How, like, is that an attitude that we should have as Muslims, or if not, how, I guess how do we handle those kinds of questions or those kinds of statements?
Right. Your action is your responsibility. And so no matter how your life ends, you are still accountable for every moment of your action. And so uh, you never choose uh, when you die, but you do have a choice in how you die. And so your type of death is not determined when when it says in the hadith, and we will read that hadith in the hadith class. One of the things that's written when you are in in your mother's womb is your lifespan. It doesn't say how you will die. So you could die in many different ways, and that's up to the person, in fact. Allah knows exactly how you'll die, but you could equally die being killed, or passing away from a natural cause. And the same thing is for getting your rizq. Your amount of wealth that you are supposed to be apportioned for is set out for you. The way that you go about getting that, you are responsible for halal or haram, legally or illegally. You're following? So,
Mm,
I mean, that's the bottom line. Your question was, how do we make people understand that that's not the reality of it? And so the danger, of course, we have to just explain to them the dangers of what they're saying. If you say that your actions don't determine, or rather, your actions are not really, they don't really matter, but everything is predetermined by Allah. Then, if you give them a slap, then you can tell them that that was predetermined by Allah. Slap them, or like say, okay, so then nothing matters anymore because everything is determined by Allah. And some of these things that people come up with, and these are deviant sects within Islam. If someone holds that belief, they don't belong to this group. It's just simply that they haven't thought it through, they haven't studied. But a lot of these positions are very intellectually bankrupt and deficient. So you just have to give what's called إلزام الخصم بما يعتقد, to 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 hold him accountable for his line of argument, to see how far it goes. Okay, I mean that's just an answer, but there are different
mm,
other ways as well that the Ash'ari and the mainstream Muslims dealt with these groups. Uh,
Jazakallah khair. I like the
okay.
slapping argument. I'll use that one next time.
Yeah. Sister Gaira. Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome,
I
sir.
have a question along the lines of what you're talking about. Because I know, to my understanding, when like uh when the ruh is breathed into the womb, there are, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there are certain things that are decreed for that person. And
Right,
to some people, it's like whether that person will go to Jannah or Jahannam. That's what I
right,
have learned. I have a
right.
follow-up question, but is that correct or
Yeah, but as we mentioned, it's not determined for the person.
mm,
It's based on the actions of the person and based on Allah's will for that person. And so it's, yeah, we will explain that in the hadith class as well, inshallah. But it's mentioned that it's written whether that person's life, his destiny will be felicitous or wretched in the hellfire. And that's, again, as we mentioned, it's an unveiling. Allah does not determine it for the person, but rather Allah knows everything that that person will choose as a knowledge that is unveiled. Not that Allah did not know it, He knows it eternally, but it's the type of knowledge which is not that it exists, and so therefore you learn about it, but rather it is always with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unveiled eternally, because He has knowledge of all things beyond the realms of time and space. So all of your actions, when it leads to your ending, being the ending of someone in paradise or the ending of someone in hellfire, that is already known. And so that is what is written. It's as if it's a seal written on the person, and when they are on the day of judgment, it is known by the angels, for example, that this is a person that we will take to paradise or to the hellfire. So it's not a determinism. It's determined that you're going to this place or that place. No, it's not like that. But rather,
mm.
it's a seal which is already known based on how you will live your life. That's the answer to the first question. What is your second question?
So if so I know like before like when the souls were together or something, every single soul decreed like La ilaha illallah, that there's one God. And then so what happened like and then when they get breathed to life and then they get born in this dunya and then like what happened? I don't know what my question is, but how does a soul go from I believe in Allah and then they get born and then it's not determined, but Allah knows that this soul will choose actions and choose decisions that will like end up that person going to Jahannam.
Mm, right.
And does that mean that a person must be aware of Jahannam to choose Jahannam? Or like, does that mean, like, what if a person is not aware of Jahannam, but they commit certain or they do certain things that lead them to Jahannam? Like, what?
Right. Yeah. So the idea of birth, when a child is born, the hadith says that every child is born upon their natural dispensation, which is the fitrah. The fitrah is the term meaning that you believe in God and that you have a leading towards goodness. And then the hadith says, and then his parents or her parents makes him into a Christian, Jew, a Majus, and there's a riwayah, another narration that says a Muslim. And so the idea is that a lot of people say, oh, we were born Muslim, right? Well, in fact, no, you were born on your fitrah, born on this natural dispensation, and you become Muslim, just as you would become any other religion. So when you become Muslim, or when you've decided that you're Muslim, it's not a reversion to your natural dispensation per se, but rather it's an alignment of that natural dispensation with the Sharia, which is the law that is a guide for you in order for you to make the best decision for your soul in this world and in the next. Because the nature of this world is that it's a test, that it's a test from Allah for you to know Him, to draw closer to Him, and also for you to gain rank in paradise. As we in Surah Mulk, it's mentioned why we were created, as a test to see which of us are best in our deeds. And so there are multiple, and to worship Allah, etc. So the nature of this world is that we have been gifted with life, and we have been gifted with the natural dispensation of witnessing the divine in every moment and in ourselves. But we have been placed in the lowest of places, which is the dunya. The dunya comes from the word dani'a, which means the lowest of places, the furthest place. For us to have elevation to the highest of places, which is paradise, and to transform our natures from worse than animals to better than angels, we have to abide by certain rulings that have been given to us, which is to be obedient to God and to benefit ourselves through that obedience. Okay, and so denying going to Jahannam, Prophet ﷺ said, no one enters Jahannam except the worst of the worst. And he also said in another hadith, everyone enters paradise except those who refuse. And people were shocked, who would refuse paradise? They are those who refuse the fabric of reality, that they refuse their nature, which is that their actions don't align with the belief of there being only one God and the need to worship that God and the importance of following and being obedient to that God. And so a human being doesn't choose to go to Jahannam, but rather they choose to ignore reality and act despite everything in front of them telling them that they should be obeying God. Okay? And I don't know if there's anything else you'd like me to add about that, but that's basically the main idea.
So then, does that mean like there's a lot of cases where like for the Fir'aun, for example,
Right.
Allah knew that the Fir'aun would deny the message, right? But well, I don't know. Allah knows best, but I'm assuming that was within the knowledge of Allah. But Allah still told the Prophet Musa and to go and remind the Fir'aun. So like, does that come from the mercy of Allah, even though He knows that some people will still refuse and
The,
ignore?
the mercy of Allah is throughout the entire process. Allah is constantly giving reminders. It's not that Allah already knows that the Fir'aun will enter. For example, if that's the correct position, that he will enter the hellfire, as is determined, of course, by the text, the text of the Quran, for example, and the Sunnah. Just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows doesn't mean that is the reason why he will enter into hellfire, and so therefore there's no purpose behind anything happening at all. But the knowledge of Allah, as I mentioned, is an unveiling of reality. Allah knows everything eternally. It's beyond our capacity to understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything, because He is unlimited and we are limited. The limited can't encompass the unlimited. So, but there's no determinism. There's no determinism. These are things that are known by Allah, but they all relate to the choices of the human being. And so, just as Fir'aun could, how do I say, he is going to hellfire, it's logical that he could go to paradise. Because we don't know, if we were not to know his ending, for example, we couldn't determine 100% that he's going to hellfire. There's a lot of various variables at play that we don't even know. So to determine someone is going to the hellfire or not is not based on simply the actions. It's also, their judgment, as Allah says in the Hadith Qudsi, that 99% or 99 parts of the 100 parts of His mercy that is created. Not the fact that Allah's mercies are uncreated, of course, but that He created 100 parts of mercy. And He gave us one part in this world. But that 99 parts of His mercy will be shown on the Day of Judgment. For there to be a forgiveness, mass forgiveness for many people after the oppression has been taken care of, and people who have been oppressed have taken their rights from the oppressors. It is very logical that they can also be forgiven. Even though the Quran and the Sunnah and all of the various sources of our religion say that no, they will be going to Jahannam, but there is a logical reasoning that they could also be forgiven. So all of these things are not determined per se. They're not determined, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is all merciful, is all loving. He can, and He's just, He's the all just as well. So we as much as we are saying that Allah doesn't determine, His writing of things is a result of His knowing it. He doesn't determine that the person will enter. How do I say that the person's ending will be Jahannam based on him, just willing that without giving the person the option to the choice to act in terms of obedience or to be disobedient. So too, don't we determine how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses. Okay, so that's also important. We don't oblige upon Allah to choose one way or the other. Are you following?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions?
No, thank you.
All right. Yeah, these things are all logical. They all make sense. But there is definitely an aspect to it that we require to, so we need to ask Allah for increase in knowledge. And what we mean by this is not simply argumentation or theoretical knowledge, but rather sapiential knowledge, experiential knowledge, which makes the heart susceptible to understanding these things. But then, of course, the intellect is still what drives the understanding. Okay. So then he says, وَلَمْ يَخْفَ عَلَيْهِ شَيْءٌ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَخْلُقَهُمْ وَعَلِمَ مَا هُمْ عَامِلُونَ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَخْلُقَهُمْ. Nothing was hidden from him before He created them. He knew what they would do before He created them. Okay. And nothing was hidden from Him. None of the actions of the creation were hidden from Allah before He created them. He knew what they were going to do before He created. Okay. And why is that the case? Because for Allah to create something, He has to know it. How can He create something and not know it? No, He knows everything about it, and He creates it. So can you create something, or can you make something and you don't know it? So it doesn't make any sense for Allah to create us and not know what we will do. Okay, because that's a part of us. Okay. Then he says, وَأَمَرَهُمْ بِطَاعَتِهِ. Despite that, knowing that, He commanded them to obey Him, and He forbade them to disobey Him. In other words, this is the point of accountability. That we are commanded to be obedient. We have that choice. Okay, so there's no determinism. وكل شيء يجري بتقديره ومشيئته. Everything that occurs is according to his will, his decree and his will. Allah says, وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَكُمْ وَمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Allah created you and that which you do. And then we explained this previously. What that means is that anything that we do, anything that we choose to do, Allah grants us, He creates within us a limited capacity to choose and limited capacity to do. The action itself is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no power to do anything except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Because Allah is the creator of everything. So since your action is a thing, He is necessarily its creator as well. It says His will is always accomplished. وَمَشِيئَتُهُ تَنْفُذْ لَا مَشِيئَةَ لِلْعِبَادِ إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ لَهُ. That we do not have complete will, and our will is only created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a limited will. The will of the servants is only that which He wills for them. In other words, that He grants us will and we make the decision to be obedient or not. Okay. فَمَا شَاءَ لَهُمْ كَانَ وَمَا لَمْ يَشَأْ لَمْ يَكُنْ. Whatever He wills for them comes to be, and whatever He does not will for them does not come to be. In other words, once you've made the decision based on Allah's creating within you the limited capacity to will and to do something, you then are, of course, your action then comes to pass or it doesn't. No matter how much I will to fly in the sky, Allah does not want it to happen, it won't happen. These are things that are, there's a lot more detail that could be said, but because this class is just a basic Aqidah class, we won't go into all those details right now, inshallah. But once we go into a more advanced book that is also based on how the latest scholars wrote, there will be a lot more points that we'll mention and explanation, inshallah. But with that, inshallah, we'll stop for now, and then inshallah we will continue next week in the Tahawiyya, inshallah. But please do, those who are in attendance now, please do, attend the next class as well, the Hadith class. Is the link the same? Is it the same one?